Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Patreon bonus episode of the Magical Mystery Hour. Yay! Uh, so happy to be here. Today was my last round of antibiotics, and I feel so much better. So much better. Yay. So let's fingers crossed it stays this way. It will be a month this week, so I can't believe it. But yeah, so feeling much better, getting back to myself, and happy to be here. So sorry to have to push this episode back a couple times, but yay. Um, all right. Well, this is our, like I said, our Patreon bonus. So we had so much fun last week or last month reading stories that I decided, why not? It works so well. I'm going to do it again. So I'm going to read you another story. This is going to be if you didn't see the title card, it's going to be an Edgar Allan Poe, which is great. But I decided not to do, the typical. I decided not to do the Raven or wow, all of them just left my head. The Cask of Amontillado, right? And the Fall of the House of Usher, which all of I love. They're all really good stories. But I decided to do one different that you probably haven't heard before. And so this one's in 4 parts, but they're all very short. So it should be about a half an hour total when I read through it earlier. Yeah, the Telltale Heart. Thanks, David. I was like, all of a sudden, I was like, what is happening? Whenever somebody puts me on the spot and they're like, what's this? I'm like, I don't know. Even if it's something that I know backwards and forwards, that's still what happens. Anyways, so I'm going to read the story of William Wilson. This is an interesting one. I actually read it for the first time before this, and I was like, oh, wow. All right. So I'll be interested to know what you think. All right. And just as we did before, after the story, David will improvise a piece based on the story you heard. And yeah, so we'll see how that goes. I'm excited. All right, here we go. So this is, I get all my scratches out, my itches, because I'm going to be sitting here for a little bit. So this is the story of William Wilson, part 1. Let me call myself, for the present, William Wilson. That is not my real name. That name has already been the cause of the horror, of the anger of my family. Have not the winds carried my name with my loss of honor to the ends of the earth? Am I not forever dead to the world, to its honors, to its flowers, to its golden hopes? And a cloud, heavy and endless, does it not hang forever between my hopes and heaven? Men usually become bad by degrees, but I let all goodness fall from me in a single moment, as if I had dropped a coat. From small acts of darkness I passed, in one great step, into the blackest evil ever known. Listen, while I tell of the one cause that made this happen. Death is near, and its coming has softened my spirit. I desire, in passing through this dark valley, the understanding of other men. I wish them to believe that I have been, in some ways, in the power of forces beyond human control. I wish them to find for me, in the story I am about to tell, some small facet that proves I could have done only what I did. I would have them agree that what happened to me never happened to other men. It is not true that no one has ever suffered as I do. Have I not intended... I'm going to go back. Is it not true that no one has ever suffered as I do? Have I not indeed been living in a dream? And am I not now dying from the horror and the unanswered question, the mystery of the wildest dream ever dreamed on earth? I am one of a family well known for their busy minds. As a small child, I showed clearly that I too had the family character. As I became older, it grew more powerful in me. For many reasons, it became a cause of talk among my friends, and the hurt it did me was great. I wanted people always to do things my way. I acted like a wild fool. I let my desires control me. My father and mother, weak in body and mind, could do little to hold me back. When their efforts failed, of course my will grew stronger. From then on, my voice in the house was law. At an age when few children are allowed to be free, I was left to be guided by my own desires. I became the master of my own actions. I remember my first school. It was in a large house about 300 years old in a small town in England, among a great number of big trees. All of the houses were very old. In truth, it was a dreamlike and spirit-quieting place, that old town. And this moment, I seemed to feel the pleasant coolness under the shade of the trees. I remember the sweetness of the flowers. I hear again with delight. I cannot express the deep sound of the church bell each hour breaking the stillness of day. It gives me pleasure to think about this school, as much pleasure, perhaps, as I am now able to express. Deep in suffering as I am, suffering only too real, perhaps no one will object it for a short time if I forget my troubles and tell a little bit about this period. Moreover, the period and place are important. It was then and there that I first saw, hanging over me, the terrible promise of things to come. Let me remember. The house where we boys lived and went to school was, as I have said, old and wide. The grounds about it were large, and there was a high wall around the outside of the whole school. Beyond this wall, we went 3 times in each week. On one day to take a short walk in the neighboring fields, and 2 times on Sunday to go to church. This was the one church in the village, and the head teacher of our school was also the head of the church. With a spirit of deep wonder and of doubt, I used to watch him there. This man with slow step and quiet, thoughtful face, in clothes so different and shining clean. Could this be the same man with a hard face and clothes far from clean, stood ready to strike us if we did not follow the rules of the school? Oh, great and terrible question, beyond my small power to answer. I well remember our playground, which was behind the house. There were no trees, and the ground was hard as stone. In front of the house, there was a small garden, but we stepped into this garden only at very special times, such as when we first arrived at school, or when we left it for the first time, or perhaps when father or mother or friend came to take us away for a few days. But the house! What a delightful old building it was, to me truly a palace. There was really no end to it. I was not always able to say certainly which of its 2 floors I happened to be on. From each room to every other, there were always 3 or 4 steps either up or down. Then, the rooms branched into each other, and these branches were too many to count. I often turned and came back upon itself. Our ideas about the whole great house were not very far different from the thoughts we had about time without end. During the 5 years I was there, I never have told anyone how to find the little room where I and some 18 or 20 other boys slept. The schoolroom was the largest room in the house, and I couldn't help thinking it was the largest in the world. It was so long and low, with pointed windows and heavy wood overhead. In a far corner was the office of our head teacher, Mr. Bransby. This office had a thick door, and we would rather have died than open it when he was not there. Inside the thick walls of the school, I passed my years from 10 to 15. Yet I always found it interesting. A child's mind does not need the outside world. In the quiet school, I found more bright pleasure than I found later as a young man in riches or as an older man in wrongdoing. Yet, I must have been different indeed from most boys. Few men remember much of their early life. My early days stand out as clear and plain as if they had been cut in gold. In truth, the hotness of my character and my desire to lead and command soon separated me from the others. I slowly gained control over all who were not greatly older than myself. Over all except one. The exception was a boy who, though not from my family, had the same name as my own, William Wilson. This boy was the only one who had ever dared to say he did not believe all I told him, and who would not follow my commands. This troubled me greatly. I tried to make the others think that I didn't care. The truth was, I felt afraid of him. I had to fight to appear equal to him, but he was easily kept to himself, equal with me. Yet no one else felt, as I did, that this proved him the better of the two. Indeed, no one else saw the battle going on between us. All his attempts to stop me and what I wanted to do were made when no one else could see or hear us. He did not desire, as I did, to lead other boys. He seemed only to want to hold me back, sometimes with wonder and always without pleasure. I saw his manner seemed to show a kind of love for me. I did not feel thankful for this. I thought it meant only that he thought himself to be very fine indeed, better than me. Perhaps it was this love he showed for me, added to the fact that we had the same name, and also that we had entered the school the same day, which made people say that we were brothers. Wilson did not belong to my family, even very distantly. But if we had been brothers, we would have been very near to each other indeed, for I learned that we were both born on the 19th of January, 1809. This seemed a strange and wonderful thing. Part 2. In the first part of my story, I spoke about my life at first school and about the other boys, over whom I gained a firm control. But there was one boy who would not follow my commands, who would not do what I told him to, as the other boys did. His name, the same name as mine, William Wilson. Although he did not belong to my family in any way, he seemed to feel some love for me and had entered the school on the same day I had. Many of the boys thought we were brothers. I soon discovered that we had been born on the same date, January 19th, 809. Wilson continued his attempts to command me, while I continued my attempts to rule him. The strange thing is that, although I did not like him, I could not hate him. We had a battle nearly every day, it's true. In public, it would seem that I had proved the stronger, but he seemed somehow able to make me feel that this was not true, and that he himself was stronger. Nevertheless, we continued to talk to each other in a more or less friendly way. On a number of subjects, we agreed very well. I sometimes thought that if we had met another time and place, we might have become friends. It is not easy to explain my feelings toward him. There was no love, and there was no fear. Yet, I saw something to honor in him, and I wanted to learn more about him. Anyone experienced in human nature will not need to be told that Wilson and I were always together. This strange appearance of friendship, although we were not friends, caused, no doubt, the strangeness of this battle between us. I tried to make the others laugh at him. I tried to give him pain while seeming to play a lighthearted game. My attempts were always not successful, even though my plans were well made. There was much about his character that simply could not be laughed at. I could find, indeed, but one weakness. Perhaps he had been born with it, or perhaps it had come from some illness. No one but me would have made any use of it against him. He was able to speak only in a very, very soft, low voice. This weakness I never failed to use in any way that was in my power. Wilson could fight back, and he did. There was one way he had of troubling me beyond a measure. I had never liked my name. Too many other people had the same name. I would rather have had a name that was not so often heard. The word sickened me. When, on the day I arrived at school, a second William Wilson came also, I felt angry with him for having the name. I knew I would have to hear the name each day a double number of times. The other William Wilson would always be near. The other boys often thought that my actions and my belongings were his, and his were mine. My anger grew stronger with every happening that showed William Wilson and I were alike, in body or in mind. I had not then discovered the surprising fact that we were the same age, but I saw that we were the same height, and I saw that in form and in face we were also much the same. Nothing could trouble me more deeply, although I carefully tried to keep everyone from seeing it, than to hear anyone say anything about the likeness between us of mind or of body or of anything else. But, in truth, I had no reason to believe that this likeness was ever noticed by any of our schoolfellows. He saw it as clearly as I. That I knew very well. He discovered that, in this likeness, he could always find a way of troubling me. This proved the more than usual sharpness of his mind. His method, which was to increase the likeliness between us, lay both in words and in actions, and he followed his plan very well indeed. It was easy enough to have clothes like mine. He easily learned to walk and move as I did. His voice, of course, could not be as loud as mine, but he made his manner of speaking the same. How greatly this most careful picture of myself troubled me, I will not now attempt to tell. It seemed that I was the only one who noticed it. I was the only one who saw Wilson's strange and knowing smiles, pleased with having produced in my heart the desired result. He seemed to laugh within himself and cared nothing that no one laughed with me, that no one laughed with him. I have already spoken of how he seemed to think he was better and wiser than I. He would try to guide me. He would often try to stop me from doing things I had planned. He would tell me what I should and should not do. And he would do this not openly, but in a word or two in which I had to look for the meaning. As I grew older, I wanted less and less to listen to him. As it was, I could not be happy under his eyes, the eyes that always watched me. Every day I showed more and more openly that I did not want to listen to anything he told me. I have said that, in the first years when we were in school together, my feelings might easily have been turned into friendship. But in the later months, although he talked to me less often then, I almost hated him. Yet, let me be fair to him. I can remember no time when what he told me was not wiser than what would have been expected from one of his years. His sense of what was good or bad was sharper than my own. I might today be a better and happier man if I had more often done what he said. It was about the same period, if I remember rightly, that by chance he acted more openly than usual, and I discovered in his manner something that deeply interested me. Somehow, he brought to mind pictures of my earliest years. I remembered, it seemed, things I could not have remembered. These pictures were wild, half-lighted, and not clear, but I felt that very long ago I must have known this person standing before me. This idea, however, passed as quickly as it had come. It was on the same day I had my last meeting at the school with this other strange William Wilson. That night, when everyone was sleeping, I got out of bed with a light in my hand. I went quietly through the house to Wilson's room. I had long been thinking of another of those plans to hurt him, with which I had until then had little success. It was my purpose now to begin to act accordingly to this new plan. Having reached his room, I entered without a sound, leaving the light outside. I advanced a step and listened. He was asleep. I turned, took the light, and again went to the bed. I looked down upon his face. The coldness of ice filled my whole body. My knees trembled, my whole spirit filled with horror. I moved the light nearer to his face. Was this the face of William Wilson? I saw indeed that it was, but I trembled as if with sickness as I imagined that it was not. What was there in his face that troubled me so? I looked, and my mind seemed to turn in circles in the rush of my thoughts. It was not like this, surely not like this, that he appeared in the daytime. The same name, the same body, the same day that we came to school, and then there was this use of my walking, my manner of speaking. Was it, in truth, humanly possible that I now saw was the result, and the result only, of his continued efforts to be like me? Filled with wonder and fear, cold and trembling, I put out the light. In the quiet darkness, I went from his room and, without waiting 1 minute, I left that old school and I never entered it again. Part 3. You will remember in the last part of my story, I told you of my experiences in my first school. I spoke of my early meetings with a boy who looked and behaved as I did, whose name was even the same as mine, William Wilson. I told of the night I went to Wilson's room with a plan to hurt him. What I saw that night so frightened me that I left the room and the school forever. As I stood looking down at his sleeping form face, I found I might have been looking at myself in the looking glass. It was not like this, surely not like this, that he appeared in the daytime. The same name, the same face, the same body, the same day of coming to school. And then his use of my way of walking, my manner of speaking. Was it, in truth, humanly possible that I was now saw the result, and the result only, of his continued efforts to be like me? Afraid, I left the school and never entered it again. After some months at home, doing nothing, I went to the study and the famous school called Eton. I had partly forgotten my days at the other school, or at least my feelings about those days had changed. The truth, the terrible truth of what had happened there was gone. Now I doubted what I remembered. Now I called the subject into my mind only to smile at the strength and the strange ideas and thoughts I had once had. My life at Eton did not change this view. The fool's life into which I had carelessly threw myself washed away everything that was valuable in my past. I do not wish, however, to tell here the story of my wrongdoing, the wrongdoing which went against every law of the school and escaped the watchful eyes of all of the teachers. 3 years of this had passed, and I had grown much larger in body and smaller in soul. 3 years of wrongdoing had made me evil. One night, I asked a group of friends who were as evil as I to come to a secret meeting in my room. We met at a late hour. There was strong drink, and there were games of cards and loud talking until the new day began appearing in the east. Warm with the wine and with the games of chance, I was raising my glass to drink in honor of some especially evil idea, when I heard the voice of a servant outside the room. He said that someone had asked to speak with me in another room. I was delighted. A few steps brought me into the hall of the building. In this room, no light was hanging, but I could see the form of a young man about my own height, wearing clothes like those I myself was wearing. His face I could not see. When I had entered, he came quickly up to me, and, taking me by the arm, he said softly in my ear, "William Wilson." There was something in the manner of the stranger and in the trembling of his uplifted finger which made my eyes open wide. But it was not this which had so strongly touched my mind and heart. It was the sound of those two simple, well-known words, William Wilson, which reached into my soul. Before I could think again and speak, he was gone. For some weeks, I thought about this happening. Who and what was this Wilson? Where did he come from? And what were his purposes? I learned that for family reasons, he had suddenly left the other school on the afternoon of the day I myself had left it. But in a short time, I stopped thinking about the subject. I gave all my thought to plans for study at Oxford University. There I soon went. My father and mother sent me enough money to live like the sons of the richest families in England. Now my nature showed itself with double force. I threw aside all honor. Among those who spent too much money, I spent more, and I added new forms of wrongdoing to the older ones, already well known at the university. And I fell still lower. Although it may not be easily believed, it is a fact that I forgot my position as a gentleman. I learned and used all the evil ways of those men who lived by playing cards. Like such skilled gamblers, I played to make money. My friends trusted me, however. To them, I was the laughing but honorable William Wilson, who freely gave gifts to anyone and everyone, who was the young and who had some strange ideas, but who never did anything really bad. For 2 years, I was successful in this way. Then, a young man came to the university. A young man named Glendining, who, people said, had quickly and easily become very rich. I soon found him of weak mind. This, of course, made it easy for me to get his money by playing cards. I played with him often. At first, with a gambler's usual skill, I let him take money from me. Then my plans were ready. I met him one night in the room of another friend, Mr. Preston. A group of 8 or 10 persons were there. By my careful planning, I made it seem that there was a chance that started us playing cards. In fact, it was Glendining himself who first spoke of a card game. We sat and played far into the night, and at last the others stopped playing. Glendining and I played by ourselves while the others watched. The game was the one I liked best, a game called Écarté. Glendining played with wild nervousness that I could not understand, though it was caused partly, I thought, by all of the wine he had been drinking. In a very short time, he had lost a great amount of money to me. Now he wanted to double the amount for which he played. This was as I had planned, but I made it seem that I did not want to agree. At last, I said yes. In an hour, he had lost 4 times as much money as before. For some reason, his face had become white. I thought him so rich that losing money would not trouble him, and I believed this whiteness and this paleness was the result of him drinking too much wine. Now, fearing that my friends might say something about me, I was about to stop the game when his broken cry and the wild look in his eyes made me understand that he had lost everything he owned. Weak of mind and made weaker by wine, he should never have been allowed to play that night. But I had not stopped him. I had used his condition to destroy him. The room was very quiet. I could feel the icy coldness in my friends. What I would have done, I cannot say, for at that moment the wide, heavy doors of the room were suddenly open. Every light in the room went out, but I had seen that a man had entered. He was about my own height, and he was wearing a very fine, long coat. The darkness, however, was now complete, and we could only feel that he was standing among us. Then we heard his voice in a soft, low, never to be forgotten voice, which I felt deep in my bones. He said, "Gentlemen, I am here only to do my duty. You cannot know the character of this man who has tonight taken a large amount of money from Mr. Glendining. Please, have him take off his coat, and then look in it carefully." While he was speaking, there was not another sound in the room, and as he ended, he was gone. Part 4. As I ended the last part of my story, I was speaking of that terrible evening when I played cards with a young gentleman called Glendining. We were in the room of one of my friends at Oxford University. I had just realized that the young man, weak of mind and weakened by wine, had allowed me to win from him everything he had owned. I was still trying to decide what to do when, as I said, the wide and heavy doors of the room were suddenly opened. Every light in the room went out, but I had seen that a stranger had entered. He was about my own height, and he was wearing a very fine long coat. The darkness, however, was now complete, and we could only feel that he was standing among us. Then we heard him speak. In a soft, low, and never-to-be-forgotten voice, which I felt deep in my heart, he said, "Gentlemen, I am here only to do my duty. You cannot know the true character of the man who has tonight taken a large amount of money from Mr. Glendining. Please, have him take off his coat, and then look in it very carefully." While he was speaking, there was not another sound in the room, and as he ended, he was gone. Shall I tell you what I felt? Need I say that I was afraid, that I felt sick fear of those who are judged forever wrong? Many hands held me. Lights were brought. My friends looked in my coat. In it they found all the high cards, the valuable cards needed to win the game we had been playing. Secretly using these cards, I could have taken the money of anyone who played the game with me. Mr. Preston, in whose room we were in, then said, "Mr. Wilson, this is yours." He lifted from the floor a fine warm coat and said, "We shall not look in this to prove again what we have proven already. We have seen enough. You will understand, I hope, the need for you to leave the university now. At the very least, you must leave this room, and leave it now." Down in the dust though my spirit was, I might have tried to strike him for those words if at that moment I had not noticed something very surprising. My coat had cost more money than most men could spend, and it had been made especially for me. It was different, I thought, from every other coat in the world. When, therefore, Mr. Preston gave me the coat which he had picked up from the floor, I saw with terror that my own was already hanging on my arm. and that the two were alike in every way. I remembered that strange being who had so mysteriously entered and left the room had had a coat. No one else in the group had been wearing one. I placed the coat offered by Preston over my own and left his room. The next morning, I began a hurried journey away from Oxford University. I ran, but I could not escape. I went from city to city, and in each one Wilson appeared. Paris, Rome, Vienna, Berlin, Moscow. He followed me everywhere. Years passed. I went to the very ends of the earth. I ran in fear, as if running from a terrible sickness, and still he followed. Again and again, I asked myself, who is he? Where did he come from? And what is his purpose? But no answer was found. And then I looked with the greatest of care at the methods of his watch over me. I learned a little. It was noticeable, indeed, that when he appeared now, it was only to stop me in those actions from which evil might result. But what right did he have to try to control me? I also noticed that although he always wore clothes the same as mine, he no longer let me see his face. He did not think. Did he think I would not know him? He destroyed my honor at Oxford. He stopped me in my plans for getting into a high position in Rome, in my love in Naples, in what he called my desire for too much money in Egypt. Did he think I could fail to see that he was the William Wilson of my schoolboy days? The hated and feared William Wilson? But let me hurry to the last scene of my story. Until now, I had not tried to strike back. He was honorable and wise. He could be everywhere, and he knew everything. I felt such wonder and fear of him that I believed myself to be weak and helpless. Though it made me angry, I had done as he desired. But now I wanted more and more to escape his control. As I began to grow stronger, it seemed to me that he began to grow weaker. I felt a burning hope. In my deepest thoughts, I decided that I was going to be free. It was at Rome, during the Carnival of 1835, that I went to a dance in the great house of the Duke di Broglio. I had been drinking more wine than as usual, and the rooms seemed very crowded and hot. I became angry as I pushed through the people. I was looking, let me not say why. I was looking for the young, the laughing, the beautiful wife of old di Broglio. Suddenly, I saw her. But as I was trying to get through the crowd to join her, I felt a hand placed upon my shoulder, and that ever-remembered quiet voice within my ear. In a wild anger, I took him in a strong hold. Wilson was dressed, as I had expected, like myself, in a rich coat of blue. Around his body was a band of red cloth from which hung a low, sharp sword. A mask of black cloth completely covered his face. "You again," I cried, my anger growing hotter with each word. "Always you again. You shall not hunt me like this until I die. Come with me now, or I will kill you where you stand." I pulled him after me into a small room nearby. I threw him against the wall and closed the door. I commanded him to take his sword in his hand. After a moment, he took it and stood waiting, ready to fight. The fight was short indeed. I was wild with hate and anger. In my arm, I felt the strength of 1,000 men. In a few moments, I had forced him back to the wall, and he was in my power. Quickly, wildly, I put the sword's point again and again into his heart. At that moment, I heard somebody was trying to open the door. I hurried to close it firmly and then turned back to my dying enemy. But what human words could tell the surprise, the horror which filled me at the scene I then saw? The moment in which I had turned to close the door had been long enough, it seemed, for a great change to come at the far end of the room. A large mirror, a looking glass, or so it seemed to me, now stood where it had not been before. As I walked toward it in terror, I saw my own form, all spotted with blood, its white face advancing to meet me with a weak and uncertain step. So it appeared, I say, but was not. It was my enemy. It was Wilson who stood before me in the pains of death. His mask and coat lay upon the floor. In his dress and face there was nothing which was not my own. It was Wilson. But now it was my own voice I heard, as he said, I have lost. Yet from now on you are also dead. Dead to the world, dead to heaven, dead to hope. In me you lived, and in my death, see by this face which is your own, how wholly, how completely you have killed yourself. And that is the story of William Wilson, Mr. Edgar Allan Poe. All right. Interesting story, right? Emily's like, wow. Oh, did David get it? Let's see. Yes. Totally guessed what was going on. Yeah. Well, since David has figured it all out, why don't we bring David on? And we were trying some sound stuff today, so tell me when I have David on if you guys can hear him. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to turn your camera on, David. Here we go. Hi. Come on. I'm asking people for help.
I'm sorry. I can hear me, so I'm assuming everybody else can too.
Let me see. Hold on. I'm going to... Oh, no, I did that. That's why I did that. Okay. So we're just going to wait because, we're on a time delay. So
yeah. Yes.
Okay. Emily says, I can hear him. Great. And it's not echoing? Yay.
Yeah. It's only echoing for me when I talk. So if I speak a little more slowly than usual, that's why. It'll totally throw me for a loop here.
It's probably, like whenever I'm on air, I always feel like I can stand and talk a little slower. So it's probably
it might not be a bad thing. Since my audio's feeding into her computer, it's looping back. Anyway, doesn't matter.
It's weird.
Yeah.
But it sounds better for you guys. So
cool.
All right. Well, what did you think?
I think during part one, I'm going to do this when I'm talking and then I'll put these back on so I can hear you. I think during part one, it was like, okay, it's a little bit weird. Not quite sure where this is going yet. And then during part two, I was like, oh, okay, the stuff is piling up here. I wonder if the twist is going to be that when I started calling William Wilson 1 and 2, if they're actually going to be, if it's the same person. If he's like maybe schizophrenic, something like that. He's got some kind of mental issue where he's got this divide between these two different personalities. And William Wilson 2 is the one that sort of keeps him sort of in control and not doing really, really horrible, awful things. But William Wilson 1 is the one that ultimately, as we saw, wins out and is just terrible.
Yeah.
There.
I was just going back to, okay, good. Paul did fill you guys in. We're going to see if Paul can make it a little later, but I'm not sure because just in case anybody wasn't in the chat when Paul came in, kids have some auditions they're working on tonight, so we'll see. Diana Nicole says, I was going to write, and this is why you don't do drugs. Fair.
Yeah. Could have been some of that. I mean, it starts young enough.
Yeah. It actually even starts younger than you would expect something like a schizophrenia
Yeah, I was
to.
just gonna say that.
Um, one thing that came to my mind was it's like the battling of like the Freudian like ego id super ego,
Hmm.
you know, parts of your brain like and
Do you want to explain what each of those are for those in the audience who have no idea?
let me look up which part does which because I always get not always but sometimes I get them backwards even though I studied in
College.
college. I studied psychology a lot. I was my part of my minor. But that's been a long time. So let me just make sure that I got it. So let's see. The super ego, id, and
English
ego.
was my minor.
English was the minor of
Of me.
me. Let's see if there's a quick.
Well, and I made that my minor because I realized that by the time I was like, oh, I maybe should do a minor, I was closest to the requirements for English. So I was just like, well, this will take the least amount of work to achieve. So let's do that.
Right. Oh, goodness. Oh, okay. Hold on. This was ended up being something that you have to like unlock.
Oh,
I was like, wait, never mind. Okay. Let's look at good old Wikipedia, see what it says. Just because, right. Um,
and unlike with the previous story that Amanda told last month, this one I'm really not sure what I'm gonna do.
so you're buying some time.
Oh no, time's not gonna help. Not in the least. I'm just gonna have to start. Also, I discovered during the course of the story, there's a little tiny spider living on the piano.
Oh no.
Yeah, little baby
Yay, but
spider.
no. I don't know. I don't know how
What?
I feel about this. I said yay, but
Oh,
no.
I thought you said gay. And I was
What?
like, I know it's Pride Month, but I'm pretty sure that's not the right use of the word.
I mean, if it's a very happy spider.
Well, true. True.
Okay. So I did have these right, but I hesitated in saying. So it says the id is the set of like uncoordinated instinctual desires. It really has no concept of like time or the outside world. It's just your instincts, right? I'm falling.
Okay.
I'm going to grab this, right? The super ego plays the moralizing role. Okay, and the ego is the organized, this is realistic agent that kind of mediates between the instincts, the desire, and the critical superego. That all makes
Okay.
sense.
It
So they
does.
work together, you know.
Yeah.
So it would be like this is why I'm thinking that they're kind of like out of whack in the story
Yeah.
and battling. Like there is no um, ego in this; it's missing, and so it's kind of like the id and the superego with no one in between them to guide them.
Right. Or to control the impulses of the id.
Yeah.
So he kind of runs rampant is his default setting, and then occasionally the superego jumps back in and is like, whoa, 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 pull it back, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's nothing in the middle to guide them between those two roads.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking of. I think there's some definite Freudian influence in there. Yeah. Let's see. And what does Paul say? I won't be able. Oh, he won't be able to make it on. But, woohoo! Great. So yeah, when Paul records, he's gonna record a tune. I just told him a little bit about the story, the very kind of bones, and he's like, "Ooh, I think I have an idea for a song." So if he like somehow magically finishes it before the show, I'll share it tonight, and if not, I'll put a link to it in the Patreon chat later. So yay! But I hope all the auditions go well. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about with the story, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's still, even though I figured out what the twist was, it was still like, woo,
I
at
know,
the
right?
end. When you just get that confirmation, it's like he has been battling himself his whole life, and now it reminded me of, I can't remember the name of the movie. It reminded me of a movie with, I think it was Rebecca Romaine, like years ago. This is probably like 15, 20 years ago. This movie came out, and it was a horror movie about a group of people that's trapped in a motel, like this isolated motel, dark stormy night, all that sort of
Oh,
thing, and they start getting killed off
yes.
one by one.
I remember that. I totally remember that movie.
Yeah, I forget.
Wasn't
It had a
wasn't that
bunch
like
of
Matthew Broderick or there was, no, but
no
there was some
John
big name.
Cusack.
John Cusack. I was
Yeah,
like some like big 80s name.
yeah, yeah. I think it had a number of fairly well-known people in it, and the
Yeah.
twist at the end.
It's been so
It's
many
been
years,
so many years.
right? If you don't want to hear it right now, there's gonna be spoilers. Cover your
Mute
ears.
your
But I mean,
speakers.
because at the time it was like a big twist.
The twist at the end was that the whole thing, the motel, all the people in it were multiple personalities of this crazy, insane prisoner. And he's been killing off all the reasonable ones throughout. So basically, he's fighting this battle in his head. And at the end of the movie, you go to this prison bus where he really physically is, and he does stuff that causes the bus to crash, kills off the guards, and runs off.
Yeah.
But it's only like the insane child personality in his head that's the lone survivor.
Because I think the murderer in his head, the one who's killing
Is the
everybody,
kid.
is the kid. You don't
Yeah.
expect it. It's wild.
Yeah, and the kid's insane.
Yeah.
So you realize none of those people, the motel, none of that was real. It was all in his head.
Yeah.
So it very strongly reminded me of that.
Yeah. And also, I thought it reminded me of the Lovecraft. Like, I felt like they were kind of connected in that use of, like, the mirror. Like, I'm looking, like in a mirror. Oh, that's me. It's like the opposite.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the other one, he was like, oh, this one is like, oh, I thought I was looking in a mirror. And the other one, it wasn't a mirror. It was glass. It was or no, he did look in the mirror. Sorry. In the other one, he realized he was the monster by looking in the mirror. And this one, he thought he was looking in a mirror.
He thought he was looking at somebody else,
Yeah.
and then realized it was himself.
Yeah. So, but they mentioned the mirror. Like, it was
Yeah.
like looking in a mirror. So I thought that was interesting, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
I
Good
know.
story.
Stories are so interesting.
Although, as I'm sitting here taking notes, I never know how much is going to be too many notes to be useful,
Oh, yeah.
and how because I've never heard the story before, so I don't know how I'm going to like boil it down to something that I can use when I'm improvising. So I'm sitting here listening to your wonderful read, and I'm thinking, there's so many words.
And you know what's
It's 19th century.
It's funny though, because I was, looking at some stuff with this too, and somebody brought up like there actually aren't that many like adjectives.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah,
a lot of
there's not.
descriptions. There's a lot of like I felt and it was and I am and I did. But like there's no description of anybody.
Unless he's describing his own stuff, like his fine coat and things like
And
that.
the place that he liked. He described
Yeah.
school for a long time.
Yeah.
But everything else was just plain and generic. He's like, yeah, and then I went to Eton.
Yeah.
And then I went to Oxford. And then I went to Rome. And I went to, but nothing about them at all. It's
Right. And no details about all the nefarious things he did in any of these
skipped over
places.
those.
Yeah. Yeah.
just those two, the card game and trying to get to the guy's wife. It's a very interesting way that he wrote it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was Poe aware? I don't know. When did Freud live and when did Poe live?
That's a
Would
good
Poe
question.
been aware of Freud's
Let's find
stuff?
out. Okay, I'm going to Google that real quick.
I don't know why I just grabbed my computer mouse here because
Let's
what
see.
am I doing?
Okay, so Freud introduced these is basically in 1920. Let's see. And when did Edgar Allan Poe live? Come on. No, much before 1809 to 1849.
Was Poe?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that the birth date of William Wilson?
Oh, yes, actually it did. Yes.
It was
I forgot.
1809.
I was going to say that he did. I did see that as well, that he used some of his own self in this.
Hmm.
So he did have that birthday, January 19th, 1809. Um, and I even saw something that said that the name that he gave, I think is Barnsby, was one of his teachers as well.
Hmm. Interesting.
Some things he put himself into the
Biographical.
story,
Yeah.
and like
Makes you
how would
wonder
I
if he identified with the character at all.
maybe he struggled with that.
I think he almost would have had to,
Yeah,
you
struggled
know.
like with impulse control.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Poe is
I
not a
mean, for
normal
sure.
guy.
No, and he had a alcoholism and
Oh, yeah.
yes,
Major issues.
yes.
Although to this day, I'm pretty sure nobody knows exactly how he died. I think he's found
It's a
dying in a
mystery.
gutter, but
It
nobody
is
knows
actually. I've heard several really
how he got
interesting
there.
theories. Maybe we'll have to talk about that at some point on the show because it is actually an interesting story.
Could have been a skydiving accident.
No. All right. Well, are you ready, or is there
Nope.
anything else that you would
Not at
like
all.
to talk about?
Not at all. Don't know what I'm going to do, which is always the most fun time to just go for it.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm going to switch it up, and we will hear.
Okay. And can you hit record on OBS?
Yes, I should have been recording the whole show,
Oh.
but I will start recording now.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead and just when we switch, just to make sure, because we had like those camera issues earlier. Just ask for a test. Can you hear me? Can you hear the piano? And just make sure everything's good before you start.
Okay.
Okay. Whoop, wait. Wrong one. No, I had them all right next to each other. Hold on. That's me. That's you. Where did the... There it is.
Okay. I can still hear me, so I'm assuming everybody else can too, but please put in the chat. Oh, okay. I just heard a noise like something got muted. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Oops, I just minimized that. I need to leave it maximized. Emily can still hear. Okay, cool. I'm going to take these headphones off, mute this mic, and off we go. Oh, the dogs. Yes, well, Lucy's sleeping on the couch. I think Lily's in the family room. Okay, if I could play Jeopardy now, right now, I would. We just remembered. I'm really glad Amanda remembered that some Lily wrangling needs to happen. So give us a sec, and we'll take care of that, and then I'll start. See, actually, if I start playing, if she'll come bolting out here. Not cooperating? Well, Lucy's fine. She's okay to stay down here. No, yeah, true. What? All right, sorry guys. So apparently Lucy just ran outside. We left the back door open. So Lucy's outside doing something, and now we have to wait for her to come back in. Lily, I don't know where Lily went. Oh, Lily's right there. Hey, Lily. You want to come here? You want to come here and say hi to everybody? Huh? No? Okay. Lily does not want to come and say hi. No offense. But yeah, really good story. I really enjoyed hearing it. And was just kind of really curious as to where it was going to go. You know, what was this horrible act of unspeakable evil that this William Wilson fellow ended up doing? And we find out that really the end of the story, he kills off that part of himself that keeps him in control. So there's like no like outward sign, probably if anybody else had been around, that anything was especially wrong.
Right? And did he just imagine him the whole time at school too? That was an
Well,
interesting
yeah,
thing.
that's the thing.
Talked about how his friends interacted with them, but did they?
Right, but that's the thing. Yeah, I don't know if you could how much you could hear what Amanda just said, but talking about the friends at school interacting with both Williams, and it's like, but he never said anything about any like direct interactions that occurred. It was always just sort of implied, and so you could imagine as his personality shifted back and forth, he's interpreting that as all the friends at school interacting with both Williams. But the other friends, of course, would likely have had no idea. Okay, dogs are wrangled. I still don't know what I'm going to do. So here we go. That got violent. Oh, I hear a door opening. Wait, do I?
Well, I assume you were done.
What?
I assume you were done.
Oh, yes. Didn't realize Amanda was in our bedroom with the dogs and not in the room where her computer is. All right. So to explain a bit about what I was doing there, there was method here. I decided to do a little twist of my own and have the main theme of William number one, the bad guy, actually be in a major key because he viewed that part of himself as positive, and he viewed the other guy, William two, as negative. So I did the main theme in G major, and the contrasting. It's actually the kind of the same theme played a bit differently. Kind of the same theme in E minor, which is the relative minor key of G major. What relative minor means is the notes that you play in the scale of G major and E minor are all exactly the same. The only difference is which one do you start on. So G major sounds like that. E minor starts a couple notes down. So they're related keys, and that was very much on purpose. And I decided to try and set up some kind of conflict between the two and sudden shifts between the two. And as it progressed, I eventually thought, oh, you know what would be really cool actually to show that the moment where he defeats the part of himself that keeps him in check and in line, transpose it to as far away from G major as you can get, which is a tritone, which is that lovely sounding interval, very unstable interval. So I briefly did a transition to C sharp minor to show that sudden transition of, at the end of the story, and then worked my way, forced it maybe a little bit back to G major, and ultimately ended it in G minor because that's where the bad self really comes out and is out of control at that point. And so it didn't seem to be appropriate to leave it in G major all the way through. So G minors. But yeah, that might be my loudest improv yet. So hopefully it came. Oh no, it's not. Okay, thought my camera was frozen for a sec, but I just kind of paused. Fooled myself. But yeah, hopefully, I don't know how much of that came through as you guys were listening, but that's what I was thinking, what I was going for as I was playing. So there you go.
Yay.
What, Amanda?
I said, yay. Yay. I did look up that movie too. It was called Identity.
Oh. I say, like I remember that.
I did. Once I saw it, I was like, oh, yes, that's what it's called. And it did have so many names. It was John Cusack, Ray Liotta, Amanda Peet.
Oh, it was Amanda Peet, not Rebecca Romijn. Okay.
And then like John C. McGinley was in it. Let me see if there's anybody else. Rebecca De Mornay.
Oh. Okay. So there was a Rebecca.
There was. Yeah, there's a lot of really famous people in this
movie.
Yeah.
I don't remember how the movie did, like how it was received or anything.
I don't remember either. Let's see if Google says anything off the top of. I don't see like a Rotten Tomatoes score pop up. I'd have to look into it, but who knows? It was 2003, I think it said. So
yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So anyways, that's the movie. Cool. All right.
Yeah, so now that I'm done blasting your eardrums out for the night.
See, I got to hear it from behind the door, so it wasn't
a little bit more muted.
Yeah.
It was pretty loud down here. I think I saw the spider vibrating.
It's like, no, wait, no. There's 8 legs. There's tons of eyeballs. Now I just imagine it with googly eyes, and that made it fun. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll finish up there. So I'll go to a one up and finish.
Okay. Then I will
Thank you for
Yeah, yeah. I was slightly terrified going into it because thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do with this.
That's how I feel every time I try to do any kind of music. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, as I said when we had lunch today, some experiences are universal.
It's true.
Of course,
All right.
what I was referencing there was Amanda had sent me this meme about the family in Bob's Burgers. Apparently, there's like a Norse legend where these two parents are trying to raise three really weird kids, and this one-eyed god or something that keeps messing up their lives. And in Bob's Burgers, it's two parents raising three admittedly very weird kids. And their landlord is this one-eyed guy, and he periodically shows up to throw monkey wrenches into their lives. So yeah, it was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So some experiences are universal.
All right. Well, good night to David. Yay.
Good night.
All right. Great. We are going to finish up there. Don't forget, if you haven't, like this video, even though it's like a private link, still always helps to like it. So like this video. And of course, if for some reason any of you aren't subscribed to the Wadcast Network, go ahead and do that. And yeah, just thank you all so much for being here. I usually have like a whole thank you thing, but thank you. That's why you guys are here, because you guys are Patreon members, and that's amazing. And as I said on my show last week, my goal was to get the merch designed in May. However, I was sick for pretty much all of May. So now merch has moved to June, and that's okay. But it will be up, and if you're on the higher tier of the Patreons, you will get a piece of merch. I also have these stickers. So if you want to send me your address, I will send you a little Magical Mystery sticker. You can stick them on your water bottles or whatever else. So let me know. I know, right? Emily, I was like, I need to figure out what to stick them on. Because, like, I also wash all my water. Like, people put stickers on water bottles. I'm like, I washed them. Why do your stickers not fall off? Is there a trick to that? I see it all the time. Or maybe I'll stick it on something else. But I could stick it on my iPad, on the back of my phone. How big are these? Let's see. Ooh, fits on the back of my phone. Yes. Yeah, just stick them on the backs of people when they walk by. David says it's free advertising. All right. Well, again, thank you guys all so much for being here, for being Patreon. Such a fun thing to do there. So I'll do another one towards the end of June. Since I was behind since today's June 2nd. But yeah, so we'll do another one soon. Do you guys like this? Is there something else you want to hear? Should I keep doing these for a while? I know I really enjoy these. So, but if you want to hear something else, of course, just let me know, because you guys are Patreon, my supporters. So just let me know what you think. All right, then I am going to bid you all a good night. I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Just like on my show, I'll say really quick though, the things coming up this week. Dari is not on this week. Dari actually went last week when we did the whole schedule switcheroo, because Dari is not available this week. So there's no gaming with Dari this week. And then but I should be fine to do my show on Wednesday. And then let's see what else. Anything else? I think nothing that I know of actually for the rest of the week other than my show, unless somebody decides. Sometimes Paul comes on and does like Lollapalooza. Yeah, David could do a show on Tuesday or another day. Since Dari's not here. Yeah. Our schedules sometimes go a little wild, so make sure you're subscribed so you know what's gonna happen. All right, so keep your eyes out. Like I said, sometimes Paul comes on, does Lollapalooza or like a Cove interview like he did today. Yeah, so it's always fun and exciting on this network. So hope to see you soon. At the very least, I'll see you hopefully all on Wednesday. I'm not even sure what I'll look and see about those songs, see if I'm ready for those. Finally, that I can start to think again. School is extremely busy, so I might just do like another 2 weeks of kind of the wild themes and then get back into it once summer rolls in. But we'll see how I'm feeling come Wednesday. All right. I hope that everybody has an amazing, wonderful night, wonderful start of the week. And I will see you all on Wednesday. Good night. Whoa.